Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
A very easy and very hard question. What are the borders of Israel? It's a very easy question because you can simply go to the government site of Israel and see the actual borders that Israel claims sovereignty over. And if you do, you'll notice that as far as claims of sovereignty, Israel claims everything that you would imagine, but does not claim the West Bank and Gaza. It does claim East Jerusalem, as it's referred to, and it does claim what is called the Golan Heights. East Jerusalem and the Golan Heights are still debated among some others, and of course Israel has control of the West Bank and varying degrees of control within Gaza, but it makes no claim to sovereignty over those places. Now that is a political sense of sovereignty, and I don't mean political in the sense of dirty tricks and nasty backroom deals. I mean political sense in the actual academic meaning that for political purposes, knowing which territory a state claims as part of their sovereign territory is often very important. It's where they're going to send their police, it's where they're going to run the wires for electricity, it's where they're going to give people passports for living in those territories, and so on. In this week's Torah portion, however, we get a more confused definition of the territory of Israel. Now, I say it's confused, one, because it doesn't come with a map, which is infinitely frustrating. I really do wish that when God gave the Torah to Moshe, that he actually gave it with a full-color pull-out map. Those of you who remember National Geographic may have been like me and loved the editions that came with the full-color pull-out maps. Those were wonderful. The Torah doesn't come with one. Instead, the Torah comes with landmarks. An area near a mountain in the north, near the river of Egypt, as if we're all going to know exactly which one that is. The Mediterranean, that's much easier to identify, and the Jordan River. Okay, those are fairly easy to identify, but it doesn't form a box. So how do we actually round off the corners of all of this territory? And if my memory serves me right, going all the way back to the book of Genesis, we had another description of the land that was going to be given to Abraham's offspring as part of the Brit, as part of the covenant. And that mentioned the Euphrates, which is way north, and depending upon how you're counting the Euphrates, way east, taking up most of modern-day Iraq and everything in between, going up to the borders of Turkey if you're going to read it in the most maximal way possible. Well, that one is much larger than this week's Torah portion, and Deuteronomy gives us a different version. Did our ancestors not know where Israel was? Was there confusion about where Israel was? I mean, how did they know who to give a passport to? How did they know where their jurisdiction lay? Well, first of all, we got to do a few reality checks to rein in what might be the more maximalist definitions of the land of Israel. So the first thing is, the river of Egypt, it's not the Nile, right? That is understood by multiple references throughout biblical literature as well as later rabbinic literature. It's a fairly prominent, not Nile prominent, but a fairly prominent river that is just a little ways into the Sinai Peninsula. So don't think that we're getting all the way to Cairo, right? That's not the river of Egypt that's being mentioned. But more to the point, when it comes time to round off, we don't make giant circles, because we know of a very famous person who never set foot in the land of Israel. He was known as Moses, right? Moses never got to go to Israel. Very, very famous. Whole incident with a rock that sets this up, along with a few other issues, and Moses never got to go. If we start in Egypt and we walk to the east bank of the Jordan River before coming back to the west where Jericho is, how do you get there without walking through Israel? Because right now, Israeli sovereignty absolutely covers that particular territory. It's what we call the Negev, all the way down to that little city of Eilat, not that little, but it's right down there at the peak, or the point of Israel near the Red Sea. So if Moses walked from Egypt to Jordan and then got ready from Jordan to go back into Jericho, he didn't go through Israel, which means technically the Negev is not part of Israel. Is that a political statement? No, it's not. No, it's not. How do I know it's not a political statement? Well, because when we go back to our more maximalist definitions, going all the way up into the north of Lebanon, or even all the way up to the borders of Syria, or off to what we would call Iraq, we do not see Israel ever being in control of that territory at any point during the Tanakh. Even at the height under the Solomonic rule, he was not the king of all of that territory. And yet, he never made war in order to become so. After all, think with me. If somebody were to capture that little peninsula of Michigan that's up there along Canada, right there, that little fork, someone just jumped across the border, captured that little peninsula, what would the U.S. do?
That country's not going to exist anymore.
What's that?
The country that did it's not going to exist anymore.
We would be aggrieved, and we would retake that territory. What else we might do as far as punishment goes, well, that's left to your imagination, but we would certainly fight to take it back. That is our territory as a political sovereign part of our land, therefore we will struggle to reclaim it. We do not see struggles to reclaim any of that territory, not under David or Solomon or even under the other kings, whether it be in the north or the south of Israel, to try and reclaim this territory. Instead, the territory of Israel maps quite clearly onto what we now recognize as a modern Israeli map. It's a pretty good match. That maximalist version, whether it be the extended northern reaches and southern reaches within our text, or whether it be the really big version under Abraham's text, never seems to have been the definition of sovereignty for most of our ancestral time. When we were most able to pursue our sovereign claims, nobody was clamoring to retake all of that territory that God had promised us, in quotes. That's a very important concept, because many people believe that if God said we can have it, therefore we have to go take it. But that does not seem to be the way our ancestors were working. Well, if it isn't a political claim, if it isn't a statement of sovereign rights, then why is the Torah bothering to give us any kind of outline of where Israel is? Why give us even vague definitions of what Israel counts as? Well, may not surprise you, but the Torah was not written as a statement of political sovereignty. It was written as a statement of spiritual sovereignty. And it turns out that Israel is a spiritual construct. That is to say, there is the land, and we need to be in control of the land, but we need to be in control of the land not purely out of some ethno-nationalist concept, because within the land, certain mitzvot, certain spiritual activities become not only possible, but all of them become heightened. There are things that we can do in Israel that are not obligatory or even possible outside the borders of Israel. Many involving agriculture, many involving the community legislations. And in particular, those community elements. Well, if we are not able to govern ourselves, if we are not able to be sovereign amongst ourselves, then we simply cannot pursue them. This has been one of the challenges of being in the diaspora, of being spread across countries around the world for much of the last 2,000 years. We have had varying degrees of independence, of freedom to practice our religion amongst ourselves to its fullest extent. Israel was being created as a place where that could happen to its utmost extent. That was its reason for existing. That was the purpose of having anything like a shape to it. It wasn't about how much land we could conquer. It wasn't about how much wealth we could generate. Otherwise, God would have given us gold mines, or in the modern world, oil. It was instead about giving us a land that we would be taught within, and that within the land we would conduct ourselves in a way that went with Torah, hand in hand, to allow us to walk with God, hand in hand. Israel is a spiritual construct more than a political one. It needs to have some political boundaries, absolutely, because otherwise, where does the jurisdiction of Torah begin and where does it end? But importantly, what is inside that is more important than the particular edges. Our ancestors understood this. Yes, they would sometimes squabble with their neighbors, almost always squabble with their neighbors. Some things don't ever change. But it was never about a maximalist vision of God wants us to have X number of acres. It was about defending what we did have in order that within it we could live our Jewish life to its fullest. And thankfully, we live in an age of miracles where since 1948, since for the first time for almost 2,000 years, we have that opportunity. Let us make sure that we are not only cognizant and interested in protecting Israel's political sovereign rights, but also defending the spiritual rights that we have within that land, ensuring that those rights are maintained for all of the inhabitants and that they are defended just as passionately as the particular lines on a map. Shabbat Shalom.